Well, Belgrade is a metropolitan city, just buildings upon buildings close together, especially towards the center of that capital city. The more distance you get, obviously, you're going to get more suburban type of life, which is where I started serving. I served in Belgrade, and where you go shopping mostly is kind of like the Smiths or the Albertsons or the Walmarts of Serbia. Is called Maxi. It's basically a supermarket. But at the time, for us, it was a lot cheaper for us to eat out than it was to go to the grocery store and buy food. So we would go, and as far as eating out, you don't go to restaurants every single day. No, that was pricey. But eating out, as far as going to the bakeries, you go to the bakeries basically for every meal because it's worth it and it's healthy. And it's kind of a little secret of the Serbians. You go to that bakery and you're going to be very, very well off. There are bakeries on every single corner in Serbia. So as far as food goes and living, you either go to the Maxi for a supermarket or you go to the bakery or some of the little food stands that they've got all around the city, like Fornetti. Fornetti are the best. They're like these little breaded pastries, but it's not like sweet pastry. It's filled with like cheese or pizza, marinara sauce. Just so good. You mostly get around. I mean, there are people who have cars, but it's such a close, tight-knit city, kind of like a Chicago or a New York, that people just take a taxi or they take buses. And that's how we got around. If we needed to get someplace really, really quick, we'd take a taxi. We would have a few connections, a few friends that we'd made through the taxi. And we'd have their cards and just call them up and say, hey, we need to get to this place pretty quick. Are you available? And they just come pick us up and we go. But most of the time, if we're just kind of traveling, we need to be somewhere, but we're just kind of going day to day schedule, then we take the bus, which I kind of miss already. I miss taking the bus. There was one area in Sremska Mitrovica where we had bikes. They weren't really our bikes, but our landlady, who we basically lived in her backyard, in a little apartment right behind her place. She had a couple bikes, one of those tiny little Euro bikes that we could use if we really needed to get somewhere very quickly. It got to the point where she didn't even, make us ask. It's just like, kids, just go take them. So, but as far as bikes go in Serbia, you don't ride a bike. you take the bus or you take a taxi or you walk, essentially. If you know what the communistic types of buildings, what those kind of look like, that's what Serbian apartment buildings look like. They're very blockish. There's just a big rectangle stuck into the ground with a bunch of apartments in them. I think the highest apartments that I've ever not lived in but tracked it in was nearly 50 stories high. Yeah, about that high. Not 40, 50 stories high. They were pretty tall. We lived in a place that was about that high, and we got to the very top, and it was great. Anyway, so lots of apartment buildings in Belgrade. As far as you go outside of the more suburb places, you've got more houses, but there were still apartments all around, like any city, but less blockish. There were actual houses that had their own character, and they're mostly built out of brick, not a lot of concrete. The concrete was mostly for driveways or asphalt for streets, or concrete for foundation. But from the foundation on up, it's all brick and cement, brick and cement, brick and cement. Very, very cool. I loved it. But then they'd back it with some drywall. but they're mostly built with brick. In Serbia, from what I saw, mostly people, it was mostly the women working. A lot of families had the women working because of a lot of trust issues with some of the men. Some of the men just did not want to work. And that was kind of the goal for us missionary was to focus on the men and say, hey, we need you to step up for your family and come to the church, and because we had a lot of part member families in the church. But as far as work goes, the jobs were mostly based around the bakeries, or obviously you had your doctors, you had your lawyers, you had your businessmen. Those were the more wealthy, but more working class was hand labor, was construction, and yeah, mostly construction or yard work or lawn care, which lawn care was as far as laying down stone or pulling weeds or farming, a lot of farming. Farming wasn't really based in Belgrade. As soon as you get outside of the big city of Belgrade, Belgrade was the biggest city and one of the main cities in all of Serbia. But as soon as you get outside, it's all farming. There's lots and lots of farming. It was mostly what we kind of tracked it into, what we kind of worked with was those either who were retired or they were in the military and were just kind of on the side of the street waiting for work to come to them most of the time. Which were a lot of people we talked to. A lot of the men, I should say, that we talked to were on the sides of the streets, and they were just basically looking for work. That was the older generation. The younger generation, the children, those who were going to high school or the college age kids, they were very productive. They were always working. They were always looking to they were looking for different opportunities to basically get out, to go abroad, so that they can study at a very prominent university or work at a business somewhere, mostly in Germany. That's where a lot of Serbians would go, would be Germany or the U.S. But the younger generation, they were very, very studious, especially in the music schools.